So I've just been out in the garden today cutting some flowers for an order for a bouquet, and I've been really lucky because, as you can see behind me, there are clouds, but there is a bit of blue sky as well, and it is not raining at the moment, and that is really surprising because for the whole of July and August so far we have had constant rain every day, and that has made it really difficult to harvest flowers successfully. So I'm taking every opportunity I can to go and cut them when it's dry. But I thought we'd talk today about what can you do if you have to harvest flowers in the rain, because this month I've had to do that. The rain just hasn't stopped. There's not been a break in the weather to do it, and you've got orders coming in. You just have to cut. It's not ideal. So how can you go and do the best for your flowers cutting them in the rain? Try and keep the quality really good. Well, I'll share with you some tips that I have just now. It's just things that have worked for me, just to help out with those flowers when the weather is absolutely terrible. Sometimes it can be really terrible in the spring as well, and in the autumn, at the early end of the season and the back end of the season, when you start to lose the summer weather as well. So even if you've got it nice with you just now, you might find that when you get into autumn it's starting to get more difficult to cut your flowers, especially with the early morning dews as well that start to come back in later in the season too. So let's go and have a look at what to do when it's wet outside and you still need to cut your flowers. So here we are down in the Cosmos patch. This is Cosmos apricota, and I just wanted to show you how the rain can damage the petals. So you can see here that just on the edges there, you can just see these little markings, and that tends to come up after the rain. Here again, you can just see the petals are too damaged. They're not good enough quality at all for cutting for arrangements or for florists. However, if you catch them earlier, and I cut at this stage before they've opened up, if it's raining, then that means that you will get them before that petal damage occurs, and they'll open up really nicely with no staining on them indoors, and you can use them in arrangements then. So when you've had a period of heavy rain and you haven't been harvesting, you might not have had orders, or you might have been away, then what you need to do with these ones is just cut them right back so that you'll get new long stems coming. So here you would be looking to cut all the way down quite deep in the plant to just above leaf node. So somewhere like that, where you can see that there's leaves coming on either side, and that'll start a new stem that'll branch up, and you will lose side buds by doing this. So you can see here that we've got some buds there and some buds there, but you have to sacrifice them in order to get new long stems coming. So for cosmos and things like that have these petals that are going to open in the vase, and it's good to get them at that early stage before the rain has damaged the petals. So just little tips like that can help if you are having to cut in really horrendous wet weather. Now I've still got more to cut for my orders today, and I can just feel the wind is starting to change, and it's always a telltale sign. I can kind of feel that I think rain is not far away. So I'm going to go now and keep harvesting, hopefully get today's flowers all cut in the dry. So it doesn't take long for the rain to come back again. This is what it's been like throughout the whole of July and a lot of August. A lot of rain. We are starting to get some glimpses of sunshine in August, which has been nice, but what a wet summer it has been. And when it's this wet, it makes cutting flowers really difficult. You're just trying to get out there in between the torrential downpours, and sometimes you just have to go out and cut even when it's still raining. I found that the horizontal support netting really helps if you're getting huge downpours, because it helps support the flowers and stops them flopping over, and they dry off and recover a bit quickly when it stops. So it really rained last night, came down in torrential downpour for some time overnight, and I need to cut flowers today and everything is still damp. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the dahlias as normal, like we looked at in last week's video, but I'm not going to put too many in one bucket. I'm going to space them out so that they're not too crowded. So let's go and do that just now. So I'm going to remove those lower leaves before I put it in the bucket. If there's quite a lot of water on the dahlias, I might just give them a bit of a shake too, just to get that excess water out from in the petals, you can see there, and that'll just help them to dry off a bit quicker once they're inside. So that's a few dahlias in the bucket. None of them are touching each other at the moment. They're nice and spread out, so we can still fit a few more in there, but we'll not crowd it. I've just shaked the water off this Chinese aster as well, so just shaking them off just gets rid of any extra moisture on them from the rain last night. I'm just going to place that in the bucket. So there's not nearly as many flowers in this bucket as I would normally put in when I was cutting when it's nice and dry, but that's as many as I'm going to put in just now. They're nice and spread out, they're not touching each other, and we're going to take them into the house to dry. We can then pop them more together in buckets once they're fully dry and they're ready to go out to florists. So I've popped the bucket into my hallway, which is north facing, so it doesn't get a huge amount of direct sunlight, and it's nice and cool, but it's dry, it's not hot. So the flowers will be able to dry off here nicely. They're not going to mature too quickly because of lots of direct sun and a lot of heat getting at them, but it's not cold and damp either, it's nice and dry in here. So they will condition in here, and then when they're nice and dry, I can pop more of them together in a bucket for giving to the florists. So I've got my bucket of flowers all put together now for the florists, and this is quite a full bucket, so I wouldn't have been cutting these in the flower patch and adding them into the bucket like this in wet weather. I would be spacing them out just a few at a time in a bucket to dry off and then put them back together like this. So in terms of the types of flowers in here, the dahlias are fully open as you can see, and the rain doesn't really damage the petals of dahlias. I've found they are really quite strong in the rain, so if you live in a place like me in Scotland where you do get a lot of rain, dahlias are a really good summer autumn flower to grow. The sunflowers, as you can see there, they're just starting to come out a bit more this morning, but they were tighter in bud when I cut them yesterday. They can get a little bit petal damaged by the rain, so I do cut them at that more closed stage, so the buds have cracked open but they're not fully out, and that just helps prevent petal damage. It's the same with the cosmos as well, they're good to cut at that earlier stage. Things like the astrantia, they're cut when they're fully out, and they don't seem to be too damaged by the rain either. You might be able to see in here, don't know whether you can or not, we've got some scabious here. They are cut when they are more fully out as well, but we've got some buds on the stem as well, which are quite nice. The scabious can get a little bit affected by the rain, but I have found that they are better cut when they are out. So I think you just have to get a bit lucky with the scabious if it's really, really wet weather, and just hope that they're not too petal damaged when you go to cut them. I think when they're just newly open, you can catch them at that stage, and then that's quite good. But if they've been sitting out open in the rain for a couple of days, then that's when the petal damage can occur. So these ones are all fine. I've managed to get them quite early on when they were just fully opened. The grasses as well, they're all right in the rain, and the foliage at the back there as well, that's okay to cut as well. It just manages fine with a bit of wet weather and a good dry, and it's good to go. So I'm going to get these flowers away to the florist today, and then we'll see what the weather brings over the weekend and see if I can get out in the dry at all to cut some more flowers. It's looking a little bit dark, the sky's behind me again today, so we'll see what it brings later on. So thanks so much for watching today, and I hope it helped to talk a little bit about what to do when conditions are not ideal, because it's not always a glorious summer full of sunshine and no wind. More often than not these days, with climate change, the weather just does seem to be having more extremes. So we had that constant sunshine and dry weather in June, which was fantastic for us because it was quite unusual for us. But then we've just had a really bad summer of constant rain. And if things continue like this in future seasons, then we're going to have to be able to adapt as flower growers and harvest in whatever conditions there are out there. So just tips like making sure you don't put too many flowers in a bucket, spread them out, get them into a dry atmosphere, don't put them into damp storage to condition, because that's just going to mean that you're going to start to get moldy flowers. trying to cut when the flowers aren't fully open. If you know that they are flowers that will continue to open once they're in the vase, then cut them at an earlier stage before they get damaged by the rain on the petals. Some flowers obviously you can't do that. Things like zinnias you do need to cut when they're fully open. But for other flowers like cosmos, it really does help to cut them at that early stage before they get damaged by the rain on their petals.